Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third live cast or live webcast here at Taking the Lead. We're so grateful that you joined us tonight. Really looking forward to it. And we're going to kick things off by introducing our wonderful moderator. Many of you know her, Deirdre Breakenridge. She's the CEO of Pure Performance Communications, but so much more. Career-long storyteller, executive media trainer, marketing expert. She strategizes with brands and businesses and business professionals to ignite engagement, lead conversations, and grow influence in the market. She is the author of 7 business books that help her readers navigate an evolving media landscape. Her most recent book, Answers for Ethical Marketers, was released by Routledge in April 2021. And her very well-known book, Answers for Modern Communicators, was recognized among the top 100 storytelling books of all time by Book Authority in 2020 and 2021. For 15 years, she's taught PR, branding, social media at various respected universities, and she's taken her passion for teaching to LinkedIn Learning, where she has 8 video courses on PR and marketing. She's been blogging at PR Strategies for more than 10 years. She's the host of the podcast Women Worldwide, which has over 2 million downloads. And for those of you who don't know, she's truly one of the world's greatest human beings. So it is such a pleasure for me to introduce my friend, Deirdre Breakenridge.
Hello, Ken. Thank you so much for that introduction. And hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Welcome. Welcome to the Taking the Lead live stream tonight. And we're going to dive into a discussion with Valerie Simon, and we're going to bring in Eric Yaverbaum. But before we do that, Ken, how about we go over some of the housekeeping?
As long as it's you and not me, we're good.
Yes, absolutely.
As long as you're doing it. Surprise.
Surprise. Okay, so wherever you're watching this broadcast, you could be watching it on Twitter. Maybe you're on Ken's Facebook page or LinkedIn, and you can leave a comment because we're in StreamYard and we can see all of your comments. So give us a shout out, say hello, and we'll be looking at the comments. And then, of course, if you have questions, put your questions there, and we're going to answer questions at the end of the broadcast. And do us a favor, write question in all caps and then ask your question, because Megan, who is helping out, she's in the green room. She's not going to come into the broadcast room. She's going to curate those questions so I can hand them over to our experts and we can dive into them as well. All right, Ken, what do you say? Should we bring in Valerie and Eric?
I think I did a great job on the housekeeping. So yes, let's keep it moving.
You were excellent.
Excellent job.
Good job. Okay, so let's welcome Valerie Simon. Hi, Val.
Hi.
And Eric Yaverbaum. There he is. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Well, it's great to have you. Thank you for being here. And now, just so you know, Ken, Valerie, Eric, there's a lot to share about these experts. They have a long list of credentials. I encourage all of you to look them up on LinkedIn. If you're not connected, connect to them. And of course, find ways to collaborate. But I am going to give the official introduction. So let's start with the man of the hour. Ken Jacobs is the principal of Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching, which helps marketing agencies, communications agencies to grow their business, manage for profitability, improve client service, and enhance team performance. And Ken does this through his training and consulting programs. Now, he also helps agency owners, leaders, and senior executives to achieve and surpass organizational, career, and personal goals. And he does this by working with them, and it's his coaching programs, that executive coaching programs, that really help. Before Ken launched his company, he spent 25 plus years at different well-known agencies in management and leadership positions, agencies including Ogilvy and Mather. He was at Marina Mar, and also Lippy Taylor. Now, of course, you know Ken because he is the host of the video podcast, Taking the Lead. And next up, we have Valerie Simon. Valerie is the Senior Vice President, Chief Marketing and Communications at Lumeris. Now, Valerie has been in marketing communications for over 20 years, and she brings a passion for growth, for healthcare delivery, and growing revenue, businesses, brand awareness, and organizational reputation. And before her position with Lumeris, she spent time as Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Atlantic Health System, and she was also Chief of Strategic Marketing for Plymouth Rock Assurance. And Valerie has held numerous leadership positions in customer service, operations, and sales capacities. Now, she's received numerous recognition for her work. She was named by Public Relations Society of New Jersey as Professional of the Year, and she also received the Millennium Alliance Healthcare Marketing Innovator of the Year Award. And now we have Eric. Eric is the CEO of Erico Communications. He is a communications, media, and public relations expert with over 40 years in the industry. He co-founded Jericho Communications back in 1985 and successfully sold that firm in 2006. He has worked with some of the largest and well-known brands, including Sony, IKEA, Progressive Insurance, Domino, H&M, and more. He's an author, and he's literally written the book on public relations. He's the author of the PR for Dummies book, which is a part of the Dummies series. And I believe he is on his 8th book, which is coming out in early January of 2023. It's called The Audacity of Silver Linings. Now, you might also have seen Eric. He is a TV pundit, and he's frequently featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur, Washington Post, and the New York Times. Well, with those extremely impressive bios, I admire all of you. I see you as leaders and role models, and it's so appropriate to be having this conversation about leaders, and thought marketers. And I just want to set the stage for everybody because you hear so much about thought leaders. You can go to Google and pull up thousands of entries on thought leaders and what it means to be a thought leader, someone who is the visionary that has deep expertise and knowledge in an area, who has carved out a reputation, authority, and credibility. And you can go to LinkedIn. According to SurveyMonkey, there are over 1 million people as of 2020 who use thought leader in their profiles. But what about the thought marketer? Because all thought leaders are communicating. So let's start there with our definition of thought marketer. And Valerie, I'm going to give it to you first. Give us your definition.
Thanks, Deirdre. It's interesting because I've had the opportunity to work with and for some extraordinary thought leaders, people whose vision is compelling, guides the way for the industry, really helps us to see where the ball is moving. But I think in order to be an effective thought leader, you really need to make sure that not only is your story compelling, but it's reaching the right audiences at the right time, in the right place, all those fun things, right? So the thought marketer is able to really help strategically make sure that that thought leadership is embraced. And I think that it's interesting because you could probably have a thought leader who may not be, the ideal thought marketer, but they're surrounded by those who subscribe to their vision and are able to help them distribute it. Or you could have someone who is the thought marketer and maybe, sharing the vision of someone else. But it's a very interesting concept trying to distinguish between the two.
It sure is. But thank you. Thank you for that definition. And let's see, Eric, maybe you want to add on to that. How do you see the thought marketer?
I'm never going to be as smart as Valerie. That's for sure. To me, the thought marketer is someone that's you're able to successfully convey your brand, the whole personality of a brand. I guess I would be considered a thought leader in PR. What's interesting about being a quote unquote thought leader, because I do want all of my clients to be thought leaders. I want them to have an opinion, but it has to be an opinion that supports their brand. And you know what? Look, I've run 3 agencies in my career, and this next statement is easier said than done. We at least in the agency world, the company that we keep. The company that we keep, in my particular case, with my particular agency, we choose. So you can look at each of our clients and say, does what that guy says on any given day support all of the brands that we're surrounded by, that we represent, which I think is the bigger picture, or at least for an agency.
No, that's a really great point. Ken, what do you think?
Well, I think what's important, to recommend is to really, just as we have servant leaders, to be a servant thought marketer, right? That just as true leaders, in my view, live to serve those they lead for their success. I think if you have that servant mindset in your thought marketing, you're going to succeed. That you really want your readers or your viewers to succeed. So you dedicate yourself to sharing what will always and only bring value, whether it's to a prospect, a client, an employee, peer boss, stockholder, or stakeholder. So that's one thought. 2 other quick ones. You want to have, not just IQ, but EQ. In addition to having something worth sharing, bring your EQ, bring that sense of empathy to all those audiences. And finally, you've got to be ethical. You've got to be ethical from the first outline till you hit send. In a social media age, share knowledge, please, based only on your research, your reading from reliable sources, and that you've verified. And I think if you do all of that, you will be a servant thought marketer.
Well, I love all of the definitions. And Ken, I'm going to pick up on what you said, because you just described the thoughtful marketer. And I do believe that if you're a leader, you will bring your thought leadership, but being thoughtful and that EQ part is so important. And before we go to the next question, Patrice made it. Hello, Patrice. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And also Michael G. Hello from Tokyo. Michael, thank you for joining us. So it's early morning.
He's having coffee. I've been told in advance he's having coffee. So
excellent. Well, good. So nice that you're having coffee with us. Thank you. All right. Let's keep rolling with the thought marketer, going a little bit deeper. Ken,
sure.
Start with you.
Okay.
How does the thought marketer approach internal and external communications? What is a good approach?
I think the approaches are actually rather similar, but let's start with internal. I mean, we know followers, team members feel greater engagement with an organization when they get the organizational vision and their roles in achieving it. And thought marketing, thought leadership is one of the best ways to drive both of those. And that is so important during this big quit, when we are trying so desperately to hold on to our people. So I think, employee engagement is essential. You've got to water that garden, as they say. Another thought that comes to mind is again with internal, is that employees are engaged when they feel that their leaders actively support their success. Thought leadership, thought marketing is a great way to do that. Now, one way where internal crosses over into external, in my experience, is that whatever drives retention drives attraction and recruitment. Because when your employees are pumped and engaged, they become brand ambassadors for you, and they encourage others to join you. So that's where starts with internal, but then goes to external. Your employee the prospects you'd like to bring in as candidates, as employees. And then finally, I've learned thought leadership, thought marketing is a great business development tool, a great marketing tool. Customers, I think, and this has been true for some time, want to engage with and buy from a company when they connect with and support that company's sense of purpose. And our friend Patrice Tanaka, whom you've mentioned, is just the expert on organizations finding their purpose. And when the organization finds its purpose, not only your employees, but your customers will want to buy from you.
Absolutely. I think customers know when you've found your purpose. It makes a big difference in the way that you come across and how you communicate. Eric or Valerie, do you want to add to the internal, external, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the whole notion of, integrity, which is a great hashtag. Of course, I'm going to say that. Do I actually have integrity? That's a demonstration, and it's a demonstration over the course of decades. But integrity and alignment, because in representation, my agency is active investors. We invest in. I don't mean we do get paid, and we are shareholders in everything we represent. If it's not something that we really believe in, we just don't do it. And that has been one of the ways. One, I have a line out the door, which is a lovely, nice problem to have in these crazy times. And two, why I can keep. Nobody leaves. If you come and you work for me, you stay. We're literally, we do exactly what we say at hello. And once you start varying off that, and look, in a previous life, and, Ken knew me well in a previous life. And yes, I did sell an agency that did do well, but it was about money. We had to make money. It's not just about money anymore. It's about doing something good in the world. And part of it may be age related. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I would like to leave the planet a better place for real, not just because I say that. I have kids. Someday, I hope they say that what I did for a living made the planet a better place. And I'll say that to every single solitary person who works for me. Do we actually do that? Because when we start taking clients for the money, because there is plenty of money out there, if you want to just take the money, then I start losing people. My whole brand disintegrates.
All right. Well, you make an excellent point. And I also noticed, it's wonderful that you want to do something good as you're progressing in your career and leave something good behind. But it's also younger generations coming in have a whole different outlook on the places that they work and how they want to. They're not living to work. They're working to live. And it makes a lot of sense. There are all sorts of studies saying that whether it's Gen Z or millennials, they prefer to be at places that care about the environment or social causes or doing good. And that's why it's wonderful that you can see that as well. Val, what do you think?
So I think it's interesting. I've been very fortunate because I've been in the field of healthcare, which naturally drives very purpose-driven team members. And so much of what both Ken and Eric said resonate so deeply with me. When I was at Atlantic Health System, one of the things we were most proud of was that we were a best place to work, Fortune magazine, top 100 for more than a dozen years in a row. That's a pretty huge accomplishment. And I do think a lot of that was due to the way the team communicated, respected each other, the values, everyone understood that mission of building healthier communities. At Lumeris, similarly, people really rally around that mission and the vision. I think thought leadership, when you can be a true thought leader, and at Lumeris, we're fulfilling the promise of value-based care. Value-based care and healthcare is always complicated, right? When you get into talking about the financing of healthcare, that can get really complicated. So figuring out ways to simplify it so that everyone can understand it. I will share that some team members had created commercials for their own department. One of the things we realized was we have so many people doing different things. And I actually shared the first one we got with my daughter. She's 13 years old. And she watched this video and she said to me, she had two questions. Her first one was, "Hey, Mom, I thought you were still in healthcare." It was talking about how folks would come into the home of a senior person and make sure that they had everything from grab bars to, you know, their banister was fixed so that they wouldn't get hurt. I said to her, yes, I'm still in healthcare, but just like at Atlantic, where there was an emergency department, here we're actually working to keep people out of the emergency department. And she had this aha moment, and she looked up at me and she said, does Pops have this? Pops is my father. And in that moment, we were fulfilling our vision is to create the system of care that every physician would want for their own family. And in that moment, that was, you know, she clearly saw it was something that everyone would want for their own family. So I think that purpose-driven communication, if you can get it right internally, and you've got to get it right internally before you start speaking externally.
That was an awesome story.
Deirdre, can I go back to something you said? Got me
Sure.
thinking that, you know, especially for those of us out there tonight in the agency field, and we talk about Gen Z and millennials, but the feelings you mentioned, the importance of purpose and how work fits into life is particularly strong among younger millennials and Gen Z. So that's age something like 22 to 33, maybe 36. So if you're on the agency side, how many of your employees are 22 to 36? I'm going to guess a lot. So if you're not working diligently to share that sense of purpose and have your employees connect to it, there's some work we need to do.
Definitely. And I do think that millennials are reaching 40 at this point. So that probably is the cutoff, which even speaks to your point more that there are a lot of Gen Z coming in and millennials at agencies. Val, I want to go back to you because you shared a really great story about how something that Lauren saw when it comes to communicating. Yes, your daughter saw based on your brand and the aha moment. The thought marketer the thought leader, the thought marketer has to communicate the brand evolution. And it is so important to be that communicator in chief. So how does the thought marketer do this the best way?
I always go back to mission, vision, values, brand promise, the fundamentals, and making sure that every single person in the organization knows them, speaks the same language, and can really embrace them. And so we talked, you know, I mentioned kind of mission and vision a few minutes ago. When we looked to kind of frame our values, we had some great values that if you asked anyone within our organization, and we actually did, they all were 100% on board, but very few people could actually remember all of the values that we had. You know, you only remember a certain amount. And so one of the things we did was we thought a lot about where we were going as an organization. We were coming together, bringing together. One of the unique things about this organization is that we offer everything from helping health systems to prepare to take risk all the way through being a joint operating partner in full MA plans. So how do we get there? We lead together. And that lead together stood for the learning, bringing your excitement, acting like an owner, do the right thing, working together, all of our actual values. And it was great because the organization really embraced that when we asked them, and we did a lot of listening. And I think that that's also really important in understanding your brand. So when we had our all hands meeting, we had over 550 comments talking about, as we kind of unveiled this reframed mission, vision, and values, talking about how they embodied it. And so we had them put together commercials. I tend to get a lot of the best ideas from our customers and from our, you know, from customers, from team members, you know, not to put myself out of a job here, but they're the ones who come up with the most fantastic ways to represent who you really are. And then it's our job to help amplify that. And that's where the brand is, because, you know, I can't create a brand. I don't even try to. What I want to do is amplify the substance that's there and make sure that we bring out the best in our team for our customers and for the industry and for, you know, those that we serve.
Excellent. And any thoughts, Ken or Eric, on the evolution of the brand and the thought marketer? Anything that you've come across?
We all change. I mean, I'm definitely different than I was last year. very different than I was, when I started in my career. And the interesting thing about evolution, which means I might think a little bit differently now than I did then, and then could be last week. The world keeps changing, and we have to change with it. Values are definitely the guardrails. But the most interesting thing to me about people is, people who need help, they look a lot like people who don't. How do you distinguish between the people who do and the people who don't? And which includes my own people who work for me, which includes my client. It's just the world. I think it's such an important time for all of us, whether we're in corporate America, whether we're living agency life. It doesn't matter what world you're living in, to actually care about each other for real. Because the thing about it is that and I'll use my very shallow Instagram as an example, which I use for accountability for fitness. And it works. And I have a big following for my fitness. It's not really what I do for a living. What I do for a living is all sorts of cool, interesting stuff to make the world a better place. But you look at me every day, for 1 second, I can take a good picture. Does that mean that it's a great day? No, I have rough days too, just like everybody. But it's so, like, to go back to Ken's point in the very beginning, the notion of empathy, the ability to see life through the lens of the people that you're talking to, and actually do that for real. Because I do think that the world, certainly the worlds that we manage, are very challenged now. People are having a very difficult time. And this is one of those times, and it's probably going to be like this for a very long time, where people don't know what to do. It's a time you got to say, listen, if you don't know how to do it, now would be a good time to figure out how to do it. But with help. And I'm not a mental health counselor, obviously, but I do care. It matters to me. I wake up curious. I wake up curious about you or whoever it is that I'm going to have, whatever my hour encounter is, whether it's an employee, whether it's a client, whether it's press. And I think if we all did that, it would be a much better world.
I do too. I think you made a really good point about caring, of course, and listening. One of the things that's happening right now is that we're so inundated with technology and social media and noise. We're bombarded with messages. It makes it even harder to listen and to just stop for a moment, and rather than firing back and proving something or sharing your opinion, but just listening and being curious. And maybe you hear something that you don't agree with. That's okay. Ask a question. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction. This would lead to more open dialogue and less shutting down and banging of heads and retreating to opposite corners, because it is a tough world out there. And there's lots of different issues that we don't have to go into, but we all know. So if we can get to a place of tuning out the noise and trying to listen more and to care, you're right, Eric, it would be a better world.
Well, part of the problem with the work, tuning out is, information dissemination is on steroids now.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So different from when we were younger. So, I am surround sound. By my phone. How did I not return the 27 texts I got? My Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. How do you do that? And how do you choose the information that you feel is reliable, and then use your own brain? I think a little bit of common sense to make decisions about what we're going to do tomorrow. And artificial intelligence is frightening. Your phone knows a lot about you. If you didn't notice in your feeds, you're getting stuff that you were just about to think about. How's your phone know that in advance? That's artificial intelligence. And the problem with artificial intelligence is, not my quote, I think it's Yogi Berra's, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. So I've got a lot of experience when I come to a fork in the road. I don't just sit there and stare. I either go right or I go left. It's based on information that I have accumulated over a lifetime of learning. Not what Facebook says to do or Twitter says to do or Instagram says to do, because that's what artificial intelligence is doing to a younger brain. I think not to pontificate about age, but I do think that it's incumbent on us to make sure that we don't let artificial intelligence rule, the future, that we make sure that we're able to use our own brains and our own experiences and, genetics to make decisions when we come to those forks in the road. So Facebook doesn't take us the way that we want to go. I mean, it's seriously polarizing, as noticed by everybody.
Right.
And it's not just about the polarization. It's not just about politics. It's about decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Best for you.
Well, I do a lot of work. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say very quickly, I do a lot of work with executives. And one of the things we do in training, whether it's media training or storytelling or presentations, it's exercises to slow your brain down, to try to relax. And I say, set your level to calm. Ken, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, and not so much about brand evolution, but about what Eric was saying, is that this sort of fear of missing out, the fact that we're getting all this data because we can, it doesn't mean our brains can take it all in and deal with it. I think we all have to be very protective of this and how it functions,
Mm-hmm.
and stop multitasking. Even though technology gives you the tools to do so, your brain doesn't want to. Your brain wants to unitask. If everyone, don't have enough time, I don't, well, okay, but you get to choose more than you realize how you spend your time. Turn off a lot of those feeds. Use your time well. If you're a morning person, that's where you do complex thinking and work on complex things. You can check email every 2 hours. The world will still keep on living, and just and spend, honestly, as good as social media is and can be, and it's made us feel connected, it really can be quite detrimental. And you've got to make the choice about how you spend your time. And one other thought about social media, especially Facebook, it seems that on Facebook, we all forgot what our moms taught us. If you have nothing nice to say, right? If someone says
Is that a golden rule in kindergarten?
and you disagree, you can just keep scrolling. You don't have to engage. And there is something about it that it is set up for conflict. And that's what attracts people to it. And I know, as I've cut back, how'd I get all this time? Right? My work day's still the same day. So anyway, Eric got me thinking about that.
That's the thing is that all of us and every single person listening, we're all literally the same in this one fact. We get 86,400 seconds in a day. That's it. Each of us, the same exact seconds. We get to choose what we do with them.
Mm-hmm.
I say take them. I'm going to do that. I'm taking advantage of all of my seconds. I'm not giving my seconds to someone else in a world that's filled with distractions. Yeah, to watch basketball still, help me with the Knicks. But I am not going to be distracted by 27 screens in the course of a second. I'm going to take the second to focus on what I want to focus on. And mostly what I want to focus on is living in inner peace. And to me, that's the goal.
Yeah. I was at a conference and I heard a major PR leader, I won't mention the name, talk about that everyone should be sleeping by their phone on their pillow because you don't know what you might miss. And I just thought, this is not a life. This is not, and that's her choice, and that's fine. But I just thought, I hope everyone in the audience is saying, no, not for me.
I want to ask a question of all of you, and I'll go around. Ken, you first.
No.
Do you sleep with your phone within 3 feet of your body?
It is down a flight and it is turned off.
Wow.
Very good. Eric, where's your phone when you go to sleep?
Absolutely not. Sleep hygiene is really hurting in this country.
Yes, it is.
We're all wired up 24/7. We don't have to be. I can tell you right now, if you don't get the proper amount of rest, forget all the other stuff. You don't get the proper amount of rest, you are not going to be an impactful, effective human being, and you are not going to have as fulfilling of a life as you could. So absolutely not.
Valerie, where's your phone?
So I guess I have to be honest here.
Yes.
We are going to be talking about ethics. And yes, it's right on my nightstand. However, I'll share two things. One is that while I used to, and realistically, depending upon the job you're in, you do make sacrifice, right? And you make decisions. I think what Ken said was really important before, in that you make decisions and you have to make them consciously and understand and determine if at that moment that's what you want to do and that's what fulfills you. Now, though, to be honest, the reason I keep it by my bed is I love to listen to some meditations before I go to bed. It actually makes me very calm and has actually helped me through the pandemic to feel a little bit more at peace. Now, I would be not saying the whole truth if I didn't say when I get up, I tend to look on it and take things, but I kind of ease into the day. So it's a little bit of a mix.
Appreciate your honesty. Mine is across the room. There's no notifications and it's turned off. And my mother knows that if she needs to reach anybody in the middle of the night, that she's to call Mark because it's on his phone and it goes to his wrist, his watch. He sleeps with it. So,
but if you think about this, because technology is great, we all use it. Mm-hmm. But look at it this way. At least, I think we should look at it this way. We should use technology. It should not use us. And right now, we are the product. We are being used by the Facebooks and the Instagrams of the world, as opposed to us using it. When we use it, it is a great tool. When it's using us, because we're the product and we're free, by the way, that to me, that's when things get unhealthy.
Right. So, Eric, on that note, let's talk a little bit about the thought marketer using social media to grow relationships the right way. Maybe you could speak to that and your experience with social media.
Yeah, my experience. When Captain Sully landed that plane on the Hudson,
yes,
I had 6 different networks on my wall, 6 different screens. I'm was a news junkie. Now I find it not great for my mental well-being, so I have to turn off the news. I can't be watching the news all day long on 6 different channels. So Captain Sully lands the plane. One of my screens is on my desk. It's a Twitter feed, and there's all the people standing out on the wing, and I'm looking at all 6 of the networks that I have on my wall. None of them. 8 minutes later, CNN has this. Not to be partial to any network one way or the other. 8 minutes later, and I thought to myself, "Wow, the way information dissemination works is different now. The match that lights the news cycle is Twitter." And when I sold my business, part of my business plan after 1 year on Wall Street, which is about all I could take, was predicated on I said somebody will get elected president someday on Twitter. A jury of my peers thought that was ridiculous. Clearly in retrospect, it wasn't so ridiculous. But it is when people ask me about social media, because everybody wants to pay my agency to do their social media. And what I say about that is by the time I finish this sentence, whatever advice I'm giving you is out of date. That's how fast stuff is changing. I don't want to be in charge of your social media. I don't want to take your money to manage your social media. And whatever luck I have had on social media, which I have, Twitter, I had 500,000 followers on Twitter, and then they banned me for life for quote unquote election interference, which I was not doing. Instagram is very physical fitness, oriented. All of my clients want a social media presence. I always advise them, get a kid. And I tell literally that group that Ken described, that is the army that works for me. I tell them all, and this is true, is that because everybody, you're 20, you're so smart, you're so fast. If I could hire 10-year-olds, I would get it done twice as fast. If I could hire kids and strollers, we would get done with everything in the first hour of the day. It's just getting faster and faster and faster. And, I'm not it's an important part of the mix. I still believe in the values of what I'll call old school brick and mortar press, even though less people pick up the New York Times or watch the evening news. If you're in the brick and mortar press, it reverberates all around the digital world anyway. It doesn't mean you don't play, in that world. And I do. I think everything that I've done in social media that has been viral or successful has been, a little bit of dumb luck.
So when people say to you, can you build a real relationship through social media? What do you say to that? if a client says, should I really invest my time and money to communicate through these channels? Can you do something real?
No, I do think that you can, and I do, and I'll just use my Instagram example of like my quote unquote tribe. Even though whatever I did today, it's all going to be in my Instagram story because I hang out with interesting people. I'm with a celebrity. I got interesting places that I go to. People are interested in that. Not nearly as many of my quote unquote tribe on Instagram who are into physical fitness, which I pontificate about a lot for accountability, for commitments, for crazy goals that I make. And I show that every single solitary day. So I have a tribe of friends who all are as inclined to live a healthy lifestyle, which I do. So yeah, I think that I do have a lot of quote unquote friends in social media. Nothing like the real world to me. Nothing like sitting down to a real meal, looking at you in the eye and having an actual conversation with you. And the next best thing to doing that is this. So at least we have technology,
Yes.
and we are using this technology so we can actually communicate with each other, not because I liked whatever you posted on, Facebook or Instagram, because, I think I like all of you all week long. I keep liking. We get to have a conversation here that's real. There's substance to this conversation, and people will benefit from our intellects rubbing together, and because we all have slightly different answers, obviously, because we all think a little bit differently. But there is value to that. So yeah, there is value to social media.
Excellent. Any thoughts? I mean, Valerie, we could say that we literally met on Twitter.
Hands. Yeah, I remember it was 13 years ago.
Unbelievable.
The same year I had my daughter, Deirdre and I connected. Maternity leave was great for figuring out Twitter. And I had been told that, Deirdre, who at the time was in the industry and was a true thought leader, and someone said she lived in New Jersey. Why don't you know her? You need to be reading her blog. You need to be. And as I was reading her blog, I was so compelled. She'd taken the time to really listen to a student, an up and coming, leader in the field, Angela, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Angela Hernandez. I still remember the post, and I still remember. And we literally, in 4 direct messages on Twitter, ended up creating our PR student chat that for the next 10 years. And that relationship ended up not only, I've hired her from a professional setting. She's actually been a client of mine. We've had multiple business type relationships, but probably even more important to me, certainly more important to me, is the fact that my kids and my dad, who he did say to say hello to.
Oh, tell your dad I said
Dad adores Deirdre.
I love him.
But I think that that's pretty amazing. And to your point, Eric, we were able to kind of go offline, right? So we were able to, and I think back to Memorial Day picnics and Labor Day at your place and all that. But I think that you certainly can build real relationships over social media.
I do too. Ken, any stories?
Well, no, I like the way you worded the question, because it is all about relationships. And when you think about it, what is that? It's just how we relate to one another. So we can have friends in real life, but I think there is also some value in the people you meet in this world. And there are quite a few where I'll talk to my family about them, and they'll say, "Have you ever met them?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I know them so well." But no, we just haven't had that dimension. And if you think about it, when you look at the last 2 years, especially, thank goodness for all of this that allowed us to stay connected when many of us were in, for a variety of reasons, lockdown, either as required by law or family situations or what have you. So I think it is about building relationships, whether for people or a brand or an organization. I think what's critical, though, is consistency of messaging. In a world where everything can be shared, a brand or an organization, I think, to get it and get it right, has to be very, very consistent, because we all know we've all read internal emails, in our public feeds, when an employee who's unhappy share something. So you've got to be absolutely consistent, because lack of consistency creates dissonance, and it results in people not wanting to follow you, whatever that followership means. I think what's really important, we've heard the word listening come up a few times. It's so essential that as you're using, again, thought marketing, thought leadership, we'll create a new term for it, that it's not one way, that you are using it to create dialogue. And for that to happen, you've got to be an active, effective listener. And that to me is a critical, whatever we're calling it tonight, that's a critical part of the success, is that you're really listening, whether it is employees, potential employees, customers, stakeholders, influencers.
Absolutely.
You make that like superb point right when I was about to interrupt you. So I listened.
Oh my! Is that good or bad?
Actively listening.
I think that it's like in my organization, one of the ways that I have found while we've all been pulled apart, by the pandemic, is I didn't want to rely on, I love text messaging. I think text messaging is a lot of this. In personal relationships and professional relationships, I will literally, and I did it right before I came on to the people that handle me in my office. I do a little video. I say, hey guys, we're good. Everybody can go home. This is happening. I figured out how to get into the room. I do this throughout the day. Like when I leave one client, I literally shoot a 45-second video while I'm walking the street, tell everybody what happened. I know every single solitary one of those videos, just like the bad emails, all of them, they better be who I am. They better be who I say I am, because all of them, like, you want to talk about damning, information. All I got to do is be faking one, just one. I say this to people all the time, generations, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s now. Now that I'm in my 60s, great. First 50 years were the hardest. Is just be you, and I'm going to be me. And let's figure out how to communicate best that way.
Eric, that's so spot on. When Ken was talking earlier, that was what came to mind to me, authentic. So when you're talking about how do you build relationships online through social and in person, and I think, and when I look at Ken, so having listened to his podcast, having watched his tweets, having known you on social before I actually had a chance to meet you in real life, I understood who you were, because you were both consistent, to your earlier point, and there was this real authenticity. You were really authentic. Sorry, having a little trouble talking this evening. It's been a long day. But I do think that came through so much, to the point, and he can tell you, where I would actually have friends who were looking for an executive coach, and I said, you need to speak to Ken, because it was so clear to me who you were, and you have this way of kind of both calming and empowering people. And I think it's kind of come through in tonight's conversation, but it is that what Eric was just saying in terms of being yourself, that ability to be authentic, I think is so, and consistent, your other point, so
Thank
important.
you. Wow.
Very much so.
I'm honored. And I will admit, it took me to age, Eric, did you say the first 50 years were the hardest or the
First
easiest?
50 years are the hardest.
Yeah, well, yes. And I didn't figure it all out and what I was meant to do and enjoy myself and all that good stuff, enjoy myself in my career till I was 50. It really took me. I was a slow learner, I guess.
Well, I'm always amazed when sometimes younger professionals will say, wow, I met so-and-so. I've been talking to her online for years, and I met her in person, and she's just the way that she shows up online. And yes, who you are online is who you are offline and everywhere that you go, because that is the real you. You take you to every single channel and every single interaction. So the human, the real, the authentic, that is the thought leader and thought marketer. And I think at this point, we're going to do some parting thoughts so that we can take audience questions for our last 10 minutes. So how about it? How about some parting thoughts on how can people be better thought leaders and thought marketers? So who wants to go first? Val, you want to give it a shot?
Sure. I think there's been so much great advice here tonight. And I think it seems like so there were some common themes, right? Number one, listening. And I think that it's clear in order to be a thought leader or a thought marketer, you really do need to first be a thought listener. You need to really be listening to but really listening and active listening, right? And I think that was to one of the other points that was made earlier. So I think that is, and then there was that clear second theme of whether you call it being authentic, whether you call it, I'm not going to dare try and say that again, whether you try and talk about the importance of ethics, consistency, but really following kind of that pathway and being true, being someone that you're proud to be with. It's fascinating to me how much of this conversation kind of weaves between the personal and the professional. And I think that line has really blurred a lot, probably because of social media. Maybe it's just at this point in our lives, but I think that that's also been it's harder and harder to separate out and say, okay, this is you, the professional brand, or this is you just kind of are who you are. And, it was cool hearing about Eric's fitness side, which I hadn't, fully realized until this conversation. I just knew him as the PR media communications guru. But I think that it really is important to be able to embrace your whole self.
Excellent. Eric, how about you? Parting thought?
While I preach, empathy and the ability to look at life through your lens, because that's a more important one if we want to have a real conversation, because we all go into conference rooms, whether it's conference rooms or it's Zoom meetings, and there's two meetings. One is what we said, and one is what we thought. If you really keep your eye on people, you'll know much more about what they thought than what they necessarily said. But I have felt that it was important for me to bring hope into the equation in any room I ever walked into. And I walked into a lot of rooms where they weren't so hopeful when I walked in. I felt like I could change the energy in the room and we could all get a lot more done. But I also think it's all about the reaction. This is personally and professionally. That's where all the power is how do you react to whatever the situation is. And I would say that right now in life, personally and professionally, we all got dealt some seriously surprising new cards. And, we're going to have to learn how to play those new cards. And the best advice I can possibly give, or I'm definitely doing, I'm going to play the hell out of those cards.
So we seem to have lost Deirdre for a moment. So I'm gonna. Oh, there you are. You're back. Yay!
Yeah, I think the internet actually went down for a split second.
New Jersey.
So,
well, I was going to call on myself. So we just had
you were just ready. Crisis.
Right. There you go. Well, I was saying, at its core, everything we've talked about tonight for me is about leadership. No surprise, and you can't lead without followers. And followers only follow those they trust. And I just want to bring it back to the importance of consistent ethics. And as our friend to all of us tonight, Patrice Tanaka, who I hope is still with us, and as we in PR who have been in PR tell our clients, trust can take a lifetime to build, but it can be gone in a heartbeat, right? So if that's the case, ethics and consistent performance, that's what builds trust. And when you have trust, you will have followers. And then you can say, I'm a leader.
Excellent. Well, all awesome parting thoughts. And let's open it up to some questions to see if anybody who is with us has anything that they want to ask. And I am checking my stream. I actually have a DM. So here's a question. Ken, this one is going to go to you. And maybe it's because you were just talking about ethics. And I know we had talked a little bit about ethics and values before. How important is it for thought marketers to demonstrate ethics and values in all of their interactions?
I mean, I think you've said it. It's absolutely critical. It's critical both because it affects the people wanting to follow you, it affects people wanting to share. And in this kind of environment, in the environment we've been talking about tonight, you will be found out if you waver. It creates a dissonance. It's too easy to be found out. And, once you lose that trust, it takes so long to build back. And it's not worth risking. It's just not worth risking. So have, what some would call your ethics or your ethical North Star. Let it guide you. Let it guide you always. And especially let it guide you when you have those toughest questions, toughest decisions to make. That's where you've got to go and say, what is the right thing to do for this organization and based on the ethics that connect us all.
You call it a North Star. I call it that ethics GPS that is
Nice.
inside of us. And too often, and this speaks to the noise around us, that if you're paying attention to all the noise, you're really not tuning in and listening to your own good judgment. Mm-hmm. And I think that it speaks to slowing down a little bit, even though things happen and we want to react in an instant. It's so important to hit the pause button, take a breath, involve others. I learned from a very good friend and colleague, Richard Bistrong, who I don't know if you know Richard, but he does a lot of work around compliance. And his own personal journey was moving from when we spoke on stage, we talked about moving from Prison Card to MasterCard, who he does a documentary training series with. And if there's one thing that I learned from Richard as he changed his trajectory and became who he is today, is that you don't make choices alone. And that is one thing when it comes to ethics, involve others and take really good advice as well. And does anybody have anything else on the ethics topic to add? Because there is one more question, and it's for Eric that has come in. So anything else on the ethics? Okay. So Eric, your question is, what's the best way to figure out your core values, and how do you make sure that there's something that you will want to remain true to?
Parenting taught me everything that I needed to know about life. Parenting is not a do as I say sport. It really is a do as I do. So, as a parent, what will my kids do? They never do anything I tell them to do. They mimic me. It took a while for me to figure that out. I would say it's exactly the same for the people that work for me. And look, and again, I don't know if this is an age thing or not, but I want the people who work for me, with me, to be as successful as I've had a great life. I mean, I'm planning on living a lot longer, obviously, but I've had a great life. I made it that way. I did it on purpose. Intentionality is a superpower. And if you live your life with intention, and it's not about money, and sooner or later, everybody figures that one out, because money cannot buy you what's important in life. It can pay the mortgage. It can get you some stuff. You could have a nice car, or, there's all sorts of things money gets you, but it does not buy you what's most important. And what is most important and what your goals are, if you stay true to them and you figure them out, I hope younger than I did. Inner peace is the goal for me, and I got that. There's nothing else I could possibly want.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that answer. And I think we have another question from Jennifer. How do you advise clients who seek thought leadership placement that they contribute meaningful context, rather than potentially adding to the noise? So great question, Jennifer. Anybody want to take that on? How you can advise clients to seek thought leadership placement with their content in a better way?
It's such a crowded space. I mean, it's having a look, for me, writing books was kind of a cheap trick. I'm an expert because I wrote books that sold a lot of copies, which really doesn't make me an expert at all. I've sat at a lot of tables where I've said, I was on the transition team between Bush and Obama, thinking to myself, Where's the kids' table? Why am I, at the adults' table? Everybody, we all have opinions. The thing is how many people will listen to our opinions, and how different are they? And if you happen to be one of those people that's in the news regularly over the course of a career, you could, like me, you could Google my name and see how consistent have I been since I'm 20 years old, or how have I, what have I learned? How did I grow up? How much of or how much of a sellout was I? I think it's so important to have your own point of view and let people know that. It doesn't mean we're always going to agree. I think intellectual friction is great between smart people. Intellectual friction gets better ideas. If we're all agree to listen to each other, take in what your, insight, what your wisdom, what your knowledge is, think about, what I had to say, and then I bet we can come up with a better answer if everybody did that.
But that requires an environment of respect.
Yes.
I don't want to end this on a bad note, but end our evening on a bad note. But that's changed so much, and well, so let me bring that around. If you want to live in an environment with more mutual respect, be the grown-up in the room. You go first. Share the respectful comment. Be open. Stop judging for just a moment. And when you're going to say something nasty in social media or in life, it's okay. Just hold back. But if we want to create that kind of intellectual friction that Eric mentioned, then it's got to come from improving the level of mutual respect, that we can disagree respectfully. And that's going to take some work. I think that's been lost. And it will take everyone agreeing that it's a cause worth fighting for.
And if you want people to listen to you, then you have to be a good listener. So you don't always have to go first. Let somebody else speak. So, and I just want to mention that Amy said, your comments are bang on, Eric.
Thank you.
Amy appreciated that. Okay, and anything else? It is definitely the top of the hour. I think.
Let me just say one last thing.
Sure.
Why am I not surprised? Wait, what is this?
Mr. Rogers said this in 1969 before Congress, before there was a PBS. In times of despair, in times of trouble, if you look for the helpers, you'll know there's hope. There's a lot of helpers out there. Look for them. There is a lot to be found.
Love it. Well, thank you for that. And panelists, thank you so much for a great discussion. And we'll keep this conversation going. Thought leaders, thought marketers are leaders today. Thank you, everybody, for joining the broadcast. And see the replay on the Jacobs Consulting and Executive Coaching YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.